My name's Brett Davis. I'm a master's student here at Robert Morris University, and I'm in the Organizational Leadership program. This is my 6th class, so I'm about halfway through the program. I'm a senior manager at Charles Schwab and Company, and I oversee 4 sectional groups there. I chose to do my final project paper on my internal Charles Schwab departments. What makes them interesting right now is that we're going through a change. We're outsourcing some business, we're bringing in some new business, and we're utilizing a vendor for some of our functions. So when all is said and done, I think the culture of the department will either hang together or it'll change a little bit. So I plan to address that in the last part of the paper when it's drafted. To start out, again, I oversee a group that's part of the Charles Schwab Company. Charles Schwab is pretty vast as far as structure goes. The operations division has several segments to it. The division I work in is called Asset Management Operations. We work with securities. We don't work with clients or reps, but rather the structure of the securities and what securities Charles Schwab will maintain. I work within operations, and my groups are called AICS Denver, mainly because we're in Denver. The entire operations group that I work for spans between Denver, San Francisco, and Phoenix, and we have a small contingency in Indianapolis. My group spans across Denver and San Francisco. I have 2 groups in Denver, 2 groups in San Francisco. As far as the demographic makeup and the cultural makeup of my group, I like to look at us as 3-dimensional. From that standpoint, we found that both social advantages as well as business advantages are found due to the diversity of the group. The social advantages are around working together as a team and cohesiveness. The business advantages are that because we're from different educational environments, different generations, and different levels of licensure, we bring different lenses to the table as far as looking at securities. So that diversity tends to benefit us socially and from a business standpoint. I'll talk a little bit about our cultural objects. There's 5 of them, 2 explicit, 1 explicit and contextual, 1 implicit and narrative, and then the last is explicit and implicit. The first cultural document that we use to guide the groups is our policy document. It speaks to what we'll do. What it does not do is speak to what we won't do. And that's because we want to afford ourselves some flexibility. In the wide world of securities, there's very standard securities which are easy to maintain, which are easy to determine strategy for. However, there's also private securities which are very difficult to maintain and don't offer a lot of visibility as far as strategy and risk. For this reason, our policy document is open-ended. It also gives us a unique blend of universalism and particularism. The particularism, of course, is demonstrated by our exception process within that larger universal concept. We know we'll accept a certain range of securities. There's always one that comes across the threshold that looks a little different than the rest, has a little different strategy than the rest. We take a very close look at those, and if the situation demonstrates a level of comfort for us, we will accept it. So that's our policy document, and that's the important thing I'd like to get across about the policy is its open-endedness and flexibility with a very wide world of different security types. Our second document is our procedural document, It's divided into 4 volumes, and it adheres to each of our 4 groups. Our 4 groups are asset acceptance, risk review, valuation, and pricing. The first 2 groups work with reviewing securities. The third and fourth group, they work with pricing and valuing these private securities. Procedure documents are all written in the same format. They're all facing the same set of business partners, but the content of each is different. However, as an object, they give us guidance and offer steering for us. They basically tell us how we do things, how we go about doing exceptions, and cover the very granular details of reviewing the security for us. Third object I want to talk about is our communication. This is an implicit object because it leaves the receiver of the information with an impression of us. So for each of our 4 sections, we have a document that we put out to our business partners. That document basically says this security is approved, this situation is approved, this service we're going to provide to you is approved, or it's declined. The impression that the group gets of us when we perform a review and offer an approval to them is one of bringing in business. It's positive, it allows them to make more money with their client, and it allows them to have smooth conversation with the client. On the other side, a declination is pretty negative. It means that the client isn't going to be able to do business with us as far as that one particular security goes. It also means that the sales rep is not going to collect that necessarily additional amount of commission around his account. So that leaves them with a negative impression. I want to point out here that context is important. You know, in the context of an approval, we're a very positive department. In a context of a declination, we're not so positive anymore. Fourth object is a slogan. Charles Schwab has 4 guiding principles in our operations division. One of those principles is referred to as culture of control. That term was coined by our top executive many years ago, and it's pervasive throughout the organization. It's in documents, it's in policies, it's in procedures, it's in marketing material. It's basically all over the place, and it pervades the entire culture. For that reason, many operational groups adopt this theme as a guide. So this culture of control theme for us becomes a guide of how to write our procedures, how to perform our business, what content to include in our meetings. It also serves as a guide for our individual as well as collective goal development, and it pretty much will guide our whole processes. So this once again becomes an implicit symbol of how we run our business in the particular AICS Denver department. Finally, we have an electronic persona, which is how we choose to, from a digital standpoint, present ourselves to our business partners, the outside world. This is done on a SharePoint site. Our SharePoint site is branded with the verbiage culture of control, and it has all of our faces, all of our profiles on it, all 21 department members. It also offers the ability for anyone to blog with us and discuss functional questions, functional processes, pretty much anything that has to do with the department. It doesn't face procedures outwardly, though. The procedure document still remains private within our internal group. So that's the external face that we present. It stands for, technical proficiency. It's modern day, and it stands for ease of communication. You can basically talk to anyone in the group via blog on our SharePoint site. So within our group, we have a large collective identity and then 4 subcultures, or rather 3 subcultures that are pretty identifiable. There's a lot of subcultures depending on how you slice any group. These are the most 3 prolific in my department. So the collective structure is based on the three principles of culture of control, specialists, and best-in-class expertise. Culture of control I've already talked about a little bit. Basically, Schwab's narrative around this is that for 40 years, Schwab's been around because we do have strong, detailed control of our processes, of our trades, of everything we do. That control, again, pervades every single department in the firm. And it forms a narrative to tie that slogan to every department and every process. Specialists. My group is mostly specialists. What we exhibit with that is that in our core competency around particular securities classes, we're the best in the firm. And that's what we want to exhibit to our business partners. We feel that that means trust and it means respect, so that they'll listen to us when we send them a negative message. They may not like us, but they'll listen to us. When we send a positive message, they'll pay attention to the directions that we contain with the message. The third component is best-in-class expertise. We're made up of a few CFAs, Chartered Financial Analysts, Chartered Investment Alternative Analysts. We have an attorney, a lot of specialists, a couple of MBAs. We have a highly educated group. And our intent is to not only in content offer best-in-class expertise, but also in our outward projection to our clients. Back to specialists, this means that they have a level of respect for us, as well as a level of comfort with what we tell them. So a little bit about our subgroups. They're more social in nature than business. The first one is our Latino subgroup. We have a high concentration of Latina employees, and they participate in the Schwab SOL organization, Schwab Organization for Latinos. One of my employees is the president of that organization, and the group, the SOL group, means to address two things within Schwab. First of all, it likes to get out there and educate Schwab internally on Latino culture. Schwab, from up to bottom, is a multinational organization. We have every ethnic group you could think of. So we like to consider ourselves diverse and understand how different ethnicities might want different things within the workplace. Second thing the SOL group does is reach out to the Latino community in Denver and offer help to struggling areas. Again, this is a good example of individualism in a very communal culture. Schwab has its larger values for giving and for supporting the community, but within those larger values, we have all of these smaller ethnic and special interest groups at our firm who reach out to the community and do special things with certain segments. So this is my group's effort at being individual with that particular community. Second subculture we have in our department are contractors. There's 4 individuals, typically 4 individuals, 5 individuals, sometimes 6, who we hire on for seasonal volume. These people tend to network at Schwab with the larger contractor population, and they talk to things such as getting a full-time job there. They help each other with resumes. They help each other connect with hiring managers. And one would think that this is a pretty competitive group amongst themselves, but they're not. They tend to be there to support one another. And something I placed in my paper, which I've found interesting, is in talking this through with one of my employees, their commentary is that, we're here to support one another because we want a leg up on the outside competition. We'd like to be able to get jobs more easily than anyone coming in off the street to Schwab. And I found that interesting because she said that any opportunity that's won for them is a win for the entire contractor group. So it shows a cohesiveness amongst all contractors at Schwab. The final subgroup that is very prevalent is our specialist community. I'd mentioned we have some CFAs, we have an attorney on board, we have some MBAs. We like to consider ourselves best in class as far as expertise goes. And those titles, those educational symbols, become implicit objects that illustrates that competence, that core competence as best in class. Finally, let's talk a little bit about the group's social problems that are generated. The first social problem I've covered a little bit. It's that of exceptions. In a culture of control, the primary assumption is that you don't stray from your processes, your policy, your procedures. And these securities out over here on the fringe that are not acceptable just won't make it onto the books. It's not the case. In some instances, we will bring those securities on in the form of an exception. We put that exception through a rigorous process, and we do a very detailed review around them. So again, that problem is solved by a blend, a balance between universalism and particularism. The second social problem is our business partners. We rely on them to communicate anything that we do to clients, and we rely on them to back us up. We don't face the clients, we don't communicate with clients, so we have a great deal of reliance upon our business partners to blend their uncertainty and the effort that they have to put in with clients with our efforts of technical review. We project ourselves and we make a promise to the business partners of being highly educated, highly licensed, and very distinct in our specialization. What does that object, that final implicit object mean? It means that they trust us and they feel comfortable with us, so they'll back us up. So that's basically what my paper is about thus far. I've covered objects, I've covered our subgroups, and I've covered our structure. Thank you for listening to my presentation.